The debt was not paid. It had only changed hands. Orestes ran until the leather of his sandals tore, and the stones of the road cut deep into his bare heels. He ran until his lungs burned with the metallic taste of his own exhaustion, coughing up dust and bile. But no matter how fast he moved, the sound stayed exactly 3 paces behind him. It was a wet, heavy sound. The sound of hounds tracking a fresh kill through the brush, mixed with a low, wordless singing that made the hair on his arms stand up. The Furies did not sprint. They did not need to. They walked, dragging their shadow over the earth, because the doom they carried was an absolute law. Orestes, the rightful king of Mycenae, had killed his mother. To him, it was a necessary execution to avenge his murdered father. To the Olympian gods, it was the restoration of a stolen throne. But the Furies were older than the Olympians. They were born from the drops of blood that fell when the sky itself was castrated in the beginning of time. They did not care about thrones or the commands of a newer generation of gods. To the Furies, a child who spills maternal blood is an abomination. It is a thing that has turned its own blood into a weapon against the source of its life. That thing must be hunted until its mind splinters and its flesh is pulled down into the dark. Orestes fled toward the blinding white sanctuary of Delphi. He dragged his bleeding legs across the marble steps and collapsed at the central altar of Apollo. He clung to the sacred stone, his hands still crusted with his mother's dried blood. He had followed Apollo's direct command to the letter. He expected a shield of divine fire. He expected the god of light to burn the monsters away and declare him clean. Apollo did appear, but what happened next broke the foundation of the ancient world. The god of prophecy stood in his own temple, radiating heat. With a sharp, sudden gesture, Apollo cast a heavy, unnatural sleep over the monstrous women crawling toward the altar. The hounds collapsed against the marble. The singing stopped. Orestes gasped for air, looking up at the god, waiting for the purification, waiting for the blood to flake off his hands. But Apollo did not raise his hands to bless him. The god looked down at the mortal and told him to run to Athens. In that terrible, quiet moment, Orestes realized the truth. Apollo could drug the monsters, but he could not banish them. He could not undo the sin. The god of light, a supreme Olympian, lacked the power to overrule the ancient enforcers of the earth. He had obeyed a god, and the god could not save him. The sleep would not hold for long. Orestes fled Delphi, leaving the safety of the temple behind. For a year, he existed as a ghost. His mind began to splinter under the weight of the invisible pursuit. He chewed on bitter bark, sleeping in ditches, his royal cloak stiff with mud and his own filth. He dared not close his eyes for long, because the moment the world went quiet, he could hear the singing again. The Furies were tracking the rotting smell of his soul. He was no longer a king. He was a weapon that the gods had used to settle a score, and now he was being slowly discarded to the beasts. Finally, starving and hollow, he dragged himself into the city of Athens. He crawled up the steep, rocky hill of the Acropolis and threw his arms around the ancient olive wood statue of Athena. He pressed his face against the carved wood and screamed for judgment. He was not asking for a pardon. He was asking for an end to the chase. The goddess of wisdom descended. Athena stood before the ruined prince and the snarling horrors that had tracked him to her steps. The white stone of Athens was suddenly fouled by the smell of stagnant water and decaying meat. She saw the trap immediately. If she allowed the Furies to tear Orestes apart on her altar, she would prove that obeying the Olympian gods was a death sentence. No mortal would ever trust heaven again. But if she used her spear to drive the Furies away by force, she would break the oldest law of the universe. The Furies would curse her city. They would turn the soil to ash, rot the wombs of the women, and plunge Athens into endless famine. The goddess of war realized this was a battle she could not win by force. So she did something entirely unprecedented. She surrendered her absolute authority. Athena declared that this matter was too heavy for one god to decide. She would not cast a lone judgment. Instead, she summoned 12 mortal men, the oldest, most respected elders of Athens. She ordered them to gather on the rocky outcrop known as the Areopagus, the hill of Ares. She drew a line in the dust. She placed Orestes in the center. On one side stood Apollo, blazing with the arrogant light of Olympus, representing the necessity of the murder. On the other side stood the Furies, a chorus of nightmare clad in black, oozing venom from their eyes, representing the unbreakable law of the blood bond. The gods had drawn a circle in the dirt, forcing mortal men to break a deadlock that heaven itself was too terrified to touch. The trial began, and the air on the hill grew cold. The Furies did not use rhetoric. They spoke with the heavy, crushing weight of stone. They pointed at Orestes and demanded his life. A mother's blood is the root of the world. Break that bond, they argued, and no hearth will ever be safe from the knife. If a son can butcher the woman who bore him and walk away clean, then every house will drown in its own gore. Children will slaughter their elders for scraps of meat. Fear of the Furies, they hissed, is the only thing keeping men from tearing each other open in the dark. Apollo stepped forward. His defense was desperate and freezing. He did not ask for mercy. He did not claim Orestes was a good man. Instead, the god argued that a mother is not a true parent at all. She is merely a vessel, a temporary nurse for the seed planted by the father. To kill a mother is not a crime against one's own blood, because the only true blood comes from the sire. It was a cold, bloodless logic. Apollo denied the earth itself, reducing the ancient power of the mother to nothing. The 12 mortal elders stared at the dirt, refusing to meet the eyes of the shining god or the rotting monsters. They were trapped between the shrieking terror of the old world and the freezing cruelty of the new. Athena stepped forward and ordered the vote. There would be no more words. 2 clay urns were placed in the center of the rock, one for condemnation, one for acquittal. One by one, the 12 mortal elders stood. The silence over Athens was absolute. The wind died down. The Furies stopped their hissing. The only sound in the world was the slow dragging of mortal feet against the stone, followed by the sharp, hard clack of a pebble dropping into clay. 12 men. 12 stones. When the final elder sat down, trembling, the urns were emptied and the stones were counted. 6 pebbles for death, 6 pebbles for life. Mortal judgment had failed. The scales hung dead level. Orestes squeezed his eyes shut, bracing his neck for the tearing of claws. The Furies leaned forward, their jaws unhinging. But Athena had kept 1 pebble in her hand. As the patron of the city, she cast the deciding vote. She dropped her stone into the urn of acquittal, declaring that a tied vote would always fall to the accused. She chose the father. She chose the cold stone of the city over the wet, ancient soil of the earth. Orestes was clean. The chase was over. He collapsed in the dirt, weeping, swearing an eternal oath of alliance between Argos and Athens. He rose, a free man, and walked down the hill. But the myth does not follow him home. Orestes leaves the story hollowed out, an instrument used to break the old world, leaving nothing of the man behind. He had his life, but his soul had been burned away. The true crisis had just begun. The Furies erupted in a wail that shook the foundation of the Acropolis. They had been robbed by a trick of mortal stones. They turned their rotting eyes on Athens. They swore to bleed venom into the earth. They promised that no crop would ever grow, no child would be born whole, and every citizen would choke on the ash of their own city. They prepared to unleash the blight they had just been denied. Athena gripped her spear, but she did not raise it. She knew the monsters were right. A city cannot exist purely on cold logic. A city needs fear. Without the terror of consequence, laws are just words carved in dead stone. Justice required the monsters. So the goddess of wisdom offered a terrible bargain. She told the Furies not to leave. She offered them a permanent throne in the dark caverns deep beneath the courthouse of the Areopagus. If they agreed to stay, no citizen of Athens would ever marry, or build a house, or pass a judgment without first pouring honey and blood into the earth to honor them. They would no longer be hunted demons in the wilderness. They would be worshipped. They would be called the Eumenides, the kindly ones. It looked like peace, but it was the darkest compromise in human history. Athena did not defeat the horror of blood vengeance. She carved it into the bedrock of the city. The monsters did not die. They became the silent, crushing weight behind every judge's gavel. In Greece, the ancient cycle of blood had finally been bound by law. But across the sea, in the smoking ruins of Troy, one last survivor was still wandering, about to learn a much harder truth. Even the favor of heaven cannot save the dead. If you want to see the final survivor of Troy drag the ashes of his city across the ocean to build an empire of blood, subscribe and wait for the next chapter.